Welcome Home, a podcast for veterans, about veterans by veterans, is a project of Willing Warriors and the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run.
Good morning. I'm Larry Ziliaks, Director of Culinary Services here at the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run. And this week we have Brenda Lauer. She is the founder of the Truman Foundation. And this is an organization that helps veterans get service dogs, points them in the right directions, gives them the information they need to find a service dog that is right for them. And hopefully they're not getting taken to the cleaners or getting a dog that really doesn't work for them and just then becomes a pet. We hate to see that. But Brenda is a veteran. I've been looking forward to her coming and sharing her story, as well as the Truman Foundation is named after her first service dog, Truman, who is a beautiful soul, just the sweetest dog you ever want to meet. And so we're really excited to have her. Brenda, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you for having me.
Let's start with telling us a little bit about your service background and your military journey that led you eventually to separate and decide, I need a service dog, and then the founding of the Truman Foundation. How did this all start?
Well, I did join the Army to see the world, and I went from Montana to Missouri, and that ended up being my whole world.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I ended up injured and assaulted, and I received a medical discharge. I didn't understand what happened to me, and for a long time, I was making bad choices and not understanding I had post-traumatic stress disorder. Mm-hmm. I was very lucky. Maybe about a year later, I was working for a VA state rep, and he literally threw a pamphlet at me and ran off. And when I looked at the pamphlet, it said, "Women that were assaulted in the military." And I was like, oh my God, that's me. And from there, the wheels started rolling. I was on the phone with a woman named Teddy, and she was the first person I realized what happened to me about the assaults. And she hooked me up with therapy and group therapy. And from there, I went to college. I became a therapist right outside of a military base. And I was able to work with other veterans and really help them with their PTSD because of my inside knowledge, possibly. But I think I also was avoiding my PTSD at the same time, because it's easy to help other people, but it's not so easy to work on yourself. So in 2013, I had a motor vehicle accident that gave me a brain injury and then eventually a benign tumor on my right side. In 2013, I thought I wanted to die, because that's what brain injuries do. They convince you want to die. And I knew I didn't want to die, but I just felt like it. So I was very fortunate. One of my friends had a service dog named Sapper, Army, and he came into the office with her, and that dog immediately wrapped himself around me. And I looked down and I was like, "What's wrong with your dog?" And she said, "Girl, what's wrong with you? My dog is telling me something." And that's when I told her everything that happened to me and what was going on in my life and the car accident. And so she helped me get a service dog. I went through Missouri Patriot Paws. They recruited Truman from the prison system. He was a prison dog. Okay. Puppies and parolees, a great program. Mm-hmm. But his original name was Sonic, and I just didn't like it. So they offered me some name changes, and when they said Truman, it was perfect. He was from Missouri, President Truman, and he just looked like a Truman.
Yeah. So that is a great program. So the puppy raisers for a number of service dog training organizations around the country, they have the puppy raisers are incarcerated, and it gives the prisoners meaning. It gives them somebody to care for, and it's just a wonderful program. How old was Truman when you got him?
I think he was almost 2 years old.
Yeah. So he had quite a bit of training. So more than a year, then, I'd say.
I believe it's a 6-week program, and what happened was he was a bait dog, but he wouldn't fight back, so they dumped him at a shelter. And then the shelter picked him up and brought him over to the program so he could get trained. He literally had scars from head to toe. And the recidivism rate is 50% less if an inmate has worked with a dog. It's a fantastic program. And nowadays they can get certifications. So when they're out, they have a job that's kind of flexible around all the appointments and all the things they need to do when they're on probation.
Oh, yeah. It's just a great program. You got to commend somebody who just thought of that. I just would have never thought of that. It's just crazy.
Absolutely. Sometimes that's the first real deep connection they've had.
Yes. So now you've got Truman, and tell us the difference that Truman made in your life.
Well, I'll tell you about the first day when I picked him up from the shelter. It was kind of like a Turner and Hooch episode. He drooled all over the car. And I was nervous too because he's part pit bull, and I've never been around a pit bull. And you know they have a reputation with some people,
Sure.
But so do veterans with PTSD, right? So when we got home, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. But that night, when I was having one of my usual nightmares, night terrors, for the first time, I just felt something in my hand that was really, really gentle, and I was kind of disoriented. But when I looked down, I saw it was Truman nuzzling my hand. And I was like, whoa, he just met me and he knows I'm having a nightmare. and I can't explain it, but I know other veterans that have service dogs understand this. When you feel like somebody has your six like that, you can sleep at night.
Yeah.
Because he's watching the door, he's listening, he's doing all the stuff that I used to do. I gave that job to him.
Yeah.
And
it just relieves you of a real burden.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's always consistent, unlike a person who has faults naturally. The next morning when I went to take a shower, and believe me, since I got out of the Army up to that point, I never took a real shower. I'd always close one eye and scrub, close the other eye and scrub because of what happened to me in the military. But that day, Truman plopped himself on the mat facing the door, and I just felt this, I got you. And I took my first real shower in over a decade, and it was glorious.
Wow.
And that was just at home. That wasn't even the stuff he did out in public.
Yeah. Then you pick him up, and what's the training process like?
Well, with every organization is going to have a different protocol, and none is more right than the other. It's just what their preferences are and how trainable the animal is. Truman and we trained with a wonderful trainer named Jesse for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I really believe that the training in itself is therapeutic. It teaches you how to be present. It teaches you how to listen to your dog and your dog to listen to you. And you're trusting the trainer to help you with these new adventures and these new experiences.
Mm-hmm. And the Truman Foundation, for our listeners, the webpage is truman-foundation.org.
Yes.
Okay, so we want all of our listeners to go to the webpage, read about Truman, just look at what they're doing. Now, Brenda and I will have a talk about the webpage when we're done here today, because I want to help you make some changes to it, because the donate button is at the bottom of the page.
Okay.
It's got to be at the top. Every other VSO out there, it's up at the top right-hand corner. We'll fix that. Go to this webpage, take a look at Truman, and then go down all the way to the bottom. I know most people don't make it to the bottom, but I want everybody to go to the bottom and click on that donate button and donate whatever you can, $5, $10, $15, $20, $1,000. Donate because this is a great organization. Helping veterans get service dogs changes their life. It absolutely. I've never met a veteran with a service dog who says, yeah, it was good. It was okay. I'm glad I got the dog. You know, they are over the moon about having a dog. It changes their life. And they are the best ambassadors for other veterans to get dogs because they can explain it in ways that generally other people can't. And also, too, when you're in the presence, so today, Brenda has Teddy Roosevelt with her new service dog. The connection, you see the connection. My sister has a wonderful service dog, Prince, and the connection between the dog and the veteran is just, it's amazing. Very often, the closest thing they have to that connection to the people they served with. So it's a hard thing to explain to people who've never been in the military. the connection you get with the people that you serve with, because it's a deeper connection that you'll ever get when you're in civilian life, because you're there with people that are on either side of you who are willing to risk their life and die for you. And so that deep connection, that bond is forged in service. The closest thing you're going to get to that and see is the connection between a veteran and their service dog. And so go to the webpage and, bang on that donate button and make whatever kind of donation you can. Again, that webpage is truman-foundation.org. So tell us about just founding this organization. Truman passes, and I know that was hard.
Very.
Very, very hard. You pick yourself up and you say, okay, I need to do something. And what a great way to honor Truman, because he is still out there informing other veterans about the benefit of having a service dog. So what made you decide to create the Truman Foundation?
When I was in Missouri with Truman, I realized a lot of people didn't understand service dog etiquette or the ADA law or the therapeutic relationship. And sometimes we would have problems. And I realized early on I needed to be an ambassador and educate and not humiliate or get upset. And because there's a lot of veterans out there that are one confrontation away with their service dog from just staying home. And that would be really tragic considering all the time it takes to get out into public. So in 2018, my best friend and I decided to start the Truman Foundation because we were doing it anyway. We were educating people and connecting people to resources. And as a therapist, I was supporting veterans with their mental health. So we decided, why not go official and make it a nonprofit? And I also am in the process of writing a book about Truman. Well, actually 2 books. One's a kid's book on service dog education, and it's a book of him and his real-life best friend, Trinity, their relationship. And then she talks about what a service dog does. And it's called Trinity and Truman Tales, Tails. Mm-hmm. And then my second book is going to be a self-help workbook type situation where it's actual things that Truman taught me about my mental health. In the first half of the chapter, I'll discuss that, and maybe I'll have a Facebook posting related to it or somebody that Truman has touched in their life. And then the second half, I'm going to have a therapist help you put it into your life so that you can learn those lessons too. And then on the high end, we get little stuffed Trumans so we can hand those out, and nice. You can have one for comfort too.
Wow.
Yeah, I went to a pet psychic a while ago because I didn't know what to do with my grief. Even to this day, I miss Truman.
Oh, yeah.
It's like losing a child.
Sure.
In my world. And the psychic was like, oh, wow, there's a dog pushing their way to the front and he's wearing something. I said, is it a vest? She said, yeah. I said, is he? And I described, she goes, yeah, that's him. I said, that's Truman. She goes, oh, my goodness. He wants me to tell you to finish those books. He wants to keep helping people. He wants the foundation to keep going, because I was ready to stop doing it because the grief was overwhelming at times. And then she told me that he sent me Teddy so I could laugh again.
There you go.
And
Teddy's a handful.
Oh, he is. He's a canine comedian.
I wish our listeners could see him, but he's got a big green bow tie on right now. And he just kind of crashed out, which is great.
Yes, and he's using Truman's graduation blanket.
Nice. Well, I can't wait for the book to come out. I think that's going to be just an amazing resource. One of the things that comes to mind that's an issue around service dogs is, one, there's no national standard for what training it has to take place to qualify a dog as a service dog. There's no way to know, okay, is this a legitimate service dog, or did somebody just get a vest off of eBay and slap it on their dog so that the dog can fly for free? So I think that's a real issue, one. Two is the lack of support for service dogs from the VA. And I understand it. I get it, because what people don't realize is that if you have a rated disability from the VA, all the treatment, everything that surrounds that disability is paid for by the VA. So in one of my ratings is my hearing aids. So these are very expensive hearing aids. When I need batteries, I just fill out a form, mail it off, and I get a whole bunch of batteries in the mail. So everything about the hearing aids is covered by the VA. Now, if the VA says service dogs, they're going to cover and provide service dogs, then everything related to that service dog is an expense that the VA covers, medical treatment, all sorts of things. And so the money involved would be substantial. But I think that at some point, organizations, veterans who have service dogs, and VSOs like the larger ones, the American Legion, the VFW, DAV, need to make a push to say it's about time that the VA started to help veterans get service dogs. What do you think the possibility of that happening anytime soon?
I think it's a long road to go, because I think, was it 2 years ago, the last study that they did on service dogs benefiting veterans, they decided it was inconclusive. So I think there's some pushback, but that's a personal opinion. But I do know from my experience, I've seen like combat vets that their family was on the brink of destruction. They were staying at home. They were feeling less valued because they couldn't go out and do things anymore. And then you put a service dog into that dynamic and the family reunites. The veteran is out having coffee at the coffee shop and going to the commissary again and getting their life back. So it's kind of a ripple effect when it's a successful match. And I don't know if the VA understands that in its entirety, because I think they're more medical model, like here's a pill for this, here's a pill for that. And the typical veteran's on at least 10 prescriptions.
I also wonder, too, one of the leading causes of veteran suicide is isolation. And when you have a service dog, it expands your world and it enables you to get out and starts to take care of that issue of isolation. So that's sort of an intangible byproduct that I don't know how they would measure, but I don't think it can be ignored because I think, especially this year, the VA's push has been around the suicide issue with veterans. This could be, I would think, play right into that and say, you know, somebody needs to look at what is the rate of veteran suicide amongst veterans who have service dogs. And my guess is it's close to zero. I think it's very low. If for any other reason that from every veteran I know who has a service dog, in their mind, I think they would say that that would be abandoning their partner.
Yes, that's how I felt.
Yeah, and so they could never do it because of that. So I think that VA really needs to take a real look at that aspect of it and how it impacts veteran suicide. What do you say to veterans? Veteran says, okay, I think a service dog would benefit me, but I really don't know. How do I find out?
Well, that is part of what the organization loves to do. That's my passion. And I'll ask them a series of questions like, what is their disability? What would they expect the dog to do for their disability? Because a service dog is meant to help you navigate your disability so you can be out in public. So it would be like anxiety alert or blocking people or watching your back, diabetic alert, seizure alert. There's so many jobs a service dog can do. Mm-hmm. And if there's one of those, then we could talk about the responsibility and the time and energy you put in. And I always recommend volunteer at your local service dog organization. Get to know the ins and outs and see if that's what you want. That's a great way to get to know them, a great way to understand the training ahead of time and to see, because it is a big responsibility. And on top of, it's a great reward, but it's a great responsibility.
It really is a commitment, because if you're isolating, you can't get a service dog and isolate. You have to get out. You have to train with that dog. You have to go to the facility. So that's a commitment right there to say, okay, I need to be more involved in the outside world. I need to get myself from point A to point B. Not really good at that. I don't like it. I don't want to ride the bus. It's too crazy. It's too expensive to take an Uber. There's probably a million reasons why that veteran believes they should isolate. If you're that veteran out there and you're thinking of a service dog, but you don't want to make that commitment because of, I don't know, the transportation issues, things like that, there are a million veteran service organizations to help you with all that.
Absolutely.
Whether it's beyond the service dog organization, but there are organizations that can help you with transportation. There are organizations that can help you with cost. There are plenty of organizations that can help you get to the point where you can get that service dog. Do you have a sense of what breed or dog makes the best service dog?
Pretty much any breed that's willing to train. And my passion, of course, is shelter dogs becoming service dogs, because a lot of organizations have a 2-year wait. And COVID kind of made that wait longer for some. And it wasn't anything on their behalf, just COVID prevented a lot of things with the breeding and work and stuff like that. So I believe that shelter dogs are out there and they're waiting to help a veteran just as well as a service dog that's been trained from birth. But there are a few breeds that trainers will tell me that they just won't. I mean, I don't think I've seen certain breeds as a service dog, but that's my experience. I could be wrong. I've seen Rottweiler service dogs that are great. I've seen even a Husky. But so I can't say, because I'm not a dog trainer, exactly what breeds will be the worst for it. But I do believe that a lot more breeds are out there than just Labs and German Shepherds.
Yeah, Golden Retrievers are a big one.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah. What is Teddy Roosevelt there? What is he?
Well, I would like to know. I want to do a DNA test, but at the very least, he's a lab because he has a little cone head on top that labs have. And the trainer thinks he's part pit bull because he has a crazy underbite.
Okay. Come from a shelter? He did, right?
Yes. He was only 3 months old when they found him, and he was underweight severely, and he was covered with fleas, possibly left for dead. So he entered the shelter system at 3 months old, and he'd been in several shelters. They pulled him from a kill shelter. He went to at least 3 different adoption events, and nobody showed interest. But for me, I was missing Truman, and I was kind of like, Truman, I really want another dog. Can you send me a dog? And I went online, and I put in Truman's breed and everything, and there he was.
Wow.
And his name was Julio.
Julio.
And
Wow.
when I contacted them, he was in Alabama, so we did all the paperwork virtually. And there's a couple that runs up and down Route 66 that takes dog back and forth, and they met me like near Front Royal, and I was able to pick them up that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. That's just great. Let me just say this webpage again. It's Truman Foundation. It's TRUMAN-foundation.org. And the donate button is down at the bottom of the page. So scroll all the way down and hit that donate button and make a donation. It's a wonderful program. It's really changing veterans' lives. And I want everybody to support the organization. A lot of what you do is outreach. So you may see Brenda at a Northern Virginia tabling event for all sorts of organizations. When you're in the veteran service organization space in Northern Virginia, there's a lot of opportunity to get out there. So if you're going to a veteran event, look for her, look for Teddy Roosevelt, say hello. But Brenda, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
And thank you as well, Larry. I appreciate you.
For our listeners, we'll have another episode next Monday morning at 0500. If you have any questions or suggestions, you can reach us at podcast@willingwarriors.org.
The Welcome Home podcast is brought to you by Willing Warriors, a nonprofit organization serving active duty service members and veterans since 2012. To learn more, please visit our webpage at willingwarriors.org.